Welcome to another week of Dan Really Likes Wine. Now, when you get married, there are a number of things you should check out before you actually decide to walk down the aisle. Does your wife have a series of previous husbands who all died in mysterious circumstances? Is she Australian? Or probably most important of all, does she like Pinot Noir? Now, unfortunately, I neglected to check this up with my wife. She doesn't like Pinot Noir, but she's a lawyer, so I can't get out of it, and we are stuck together. The only upside is I get to drink all the Pinot Noir, but not share it with her. She's a barbarian, and for reasons best known to her, doesn't like it. I love it, and I think if there's one wine I had to go to the grave with, this would be it. It's the kind of wine you can really go overboard about, be as pretentious as you like. It's liquid silk, it's majestic, it's regal, and most of the time, all of those descriptions do fit the bill, and particularly with these four. We start this week with a slightly more entry-level Pinot Noir though. If you've been out to the Elgin area, you may well know Paul Cluver. He's an institution in South African winemaking, and the Elgin Valley is great for Pinot Noir. It's cool, it's wet, and it makes lovely, lovely wine of this particular varietal. And it's best made with the 7 flags, and that's the Paul Cluver flagship. But not all the wines we do here on Dan Really Likes Wine are at the very highest level. We like to do some stuff that's a little more accessible. And if you haven't drunk a lot of Pinot Noir, this is a really good way to start, because although it's not their very top level wine, it's a really nice example of what makes Pinot Noir for me so accessible. The great things about Pinot Noir, it's soft, it's velvety, and you can also drink it a lot sooner than you can most red wines. You need to give others a good few years in bottle. This, a year or two afterwards, you can drink, although most of them do have the ability to last a lot longer. So this is our first one, and it does have one other feature. It's the first wine we've had on Dan Really Likes Wine with a screw cap. Now, the traditionalists might blanch at the sides of the screw cap, but we do have a bit of a problem with corks in South Africa. A lot of wine does get corked. The quality of cork, not as good as it used to be. We're making lots of it as we need to. There's so much more wine, but it does mean that oxygen can slip through and the wines can spoil. So making use of a screw cap, it's done a lot across the New World and indeed in Europe, and it's catching on a little more in South Africa. Not massively, but we are seeing a little more of it and a little more with red. And this is an example. So screw cap off and into a wine that does celebrate so much of what Elgin wine is all about. That cool climate, lots of beautiful fruit, and in this case, an estate Pinot Noir. That's a lovely example thereof. So this is our first wine for today from Paul Cluver, the estate Pinot Noir. So one of the great things about wine, as anybody who's ever been to a wine tasting or a wine event will know, is you can spend so much time talking it up and making it sound far more important than it really is. And one of the key aspects there is the colour. So instead of saying it's red or dark red or light grade, go for something a little more colourful or creative. So this has a hint of burnt rust to it as you look at it, and it really does actually. You can just see there, it's a lighter colour, and that's because it is a lighter wine, a lighter grape, and it really does just slip onto the palate ever so gently. How does it taste? Let's find out. So I'm at a slight advantage in that I've tasted all of the other ones before, so I know what's coming, and what's coming is sensational. This, in context, is very good. It's a really nice Pinot Noir. It's smooth, it's soft, it's not quite as refined around the edges as the others. Given its price point, it's by some distance the most inexpensive of the Pinot Noirs here. It's a really nice wine to stock up on. And if Sauvignon Blanc is your white wine of choice for a summer's day, this is the equivalent for the red wine drinker. A really accessible, really easy drinking Pinot Noir that just slides down very dangerously indeed. Right, so that's the Paul Cluver. Onto a wine that you might not have heard of because we don't see a lot of it in South Africa. It's an estate just outside of Stellenbosch, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've been to. It's in that Jonkershoek area, and it's done so nicely. You arrive and there's a little dam, and you walk across a bridge onto an island, and that's where they do the wine tasting. By the time you get there, you're so sold on the environment, you're probably going to think the wine's lovely anyway. But they do back it up with something rather special. They've got a series of great wines. Their 3 Pints Syrah is exceptional. But this Pinot Noir is very nice as well. Rowy vineyards, and the catch here is that although they are based in Stellenbosch, this is another Elgin Pinot Noir. And this speaks to what we had before. It's just such a good area for making Pinot Noir. So this one, a little more expensive, just a touch older. This is a 2012, slightly more ruby in colour. See, last one was rust, this one's ruby. But again, expecting that same sort of smoothness, just a little darker. See how it goes. Got more alcohol on the nose. So there we go. It's a slightly different Pinot Noir to the one before. Yes, they come from a similar part of the world, but maybe it's just lived in Stellenbosch a little longer and picked up some slightly different characteristics. Very slightly heavier wine, very slightly darker wine, just a little sharper on the palate. The wines at Stark-Conde do age very well, so maybe this just needs a little more time to fully see its potential. That said, it's still a lovely Pinot Noir and a good reason to go and visit a beautiful wine estate. And those are both lovely Pinot Noirs. I like them both very much. But the real reason for doing this particular segment is for the two rock stars that we're about to try out. Bouchard Finlayson and Hamilton Russell. So the Hemelanada Valley is where these two wines are from. It's kind of like Elgin, but even better suited to making a Pinot Noir. The grapes are sheltered from the wind, it's cool, has just the right amount of rain, and it's just a lovely part of the world to visit. That whole stretch of road, you can head up to Ataraxias in the same part of the world, and you've got two real rock stars of South African wine here. The first one to try today is the Bouchard Finlayson. Finlayson in particular is a name synonymous with South African wine, and it falls under the Greater Walker Bay. This is the Gulpen Peak, and Pinot Noir drinkers tend to fall into two categories. You're either the Bouchard Finlayson fan or the Hamilton Russell fan. You generally like both, but you do have a leaning one way or the other. This is 2012, so it's 4 years old. It's had a little bit of time in bottle just to find its feet. And again, somewhere between the colours of the Stark-Conde and the Paul Cluver. It's got the rust, but also that slight darkness. And this is one of the aristocrats of South African wine. Don't tell my wife, but I'd probably trade one of my children for a case of this. That is glorious. It's just a lovely, lovely expression of wine. It is soft, it is deep, it just swells about the palate, and it says, I belong here. It's probably seductive. That's the best word I could come up with. I say seductive. I'm going to have another sip. Right, so the last of them all. Now, Hamilton Russell take their Pinot Noir very, very seriously. How seriously? Well, they only make two varieties of wine. Chardonnay is one, and Pinot Noir is the other. The Chardonnay, I've got no doubt, will taste in due course. This is their Pinot. It's a 2013, just a touch younger than the Bouchard Finlayson we tasted a moment ago. And these two do trade punches across the wine world in South Africa as to who is the king of Pinot Noir. So that Bouchard Finlayson is still sitting on the palate with just a flicker of reminder of how good it is. Now it's up to the Hamilton Russell to see if it can live up to the previous billing. Very, very different nose. There's almost a caramel feel to it, and just a slight more hint of rust. It's a different colour also slightly, and these guys are just about next door to each other. So it's the New Zealanders who are generally credited with having the best Pinot Noir in the world, and they do make some exceptional stuff. I've been over there and it's lovely, but we make a pretty good fist of it here. If you're starting out, if your budget's a little limited or you're not sure about Pinot Noir, that Paul Cluver is fantastic. Heading down to Stark-Conde just to go and see the place is worth it. Their wine across the board, superb. But in terms of the Pinot Noir, it's these two, and gee, it's a tough call. That Hamilton Russell is sensational. Today I'm leaning slightly towards the Bouchard Finlayson. Tomorrow it'll probably be the other way around. They just are such great wines. If I were you, I'd buy them both. And if you're really lucky, your wife won't like them either, or your husband, and you can drink them both yourself. Enjoy.